Welcome to Keep It Humane, the podcast, where we dive deep into topics surrounding kindness, compassion, and creating a more humane world, whether it's in our communities, in the workplace, or in the world of animal control and shelters. With our hosts,
Ashley Bishop.
And Ashley Bishop.
And I'm Daniel Ettinger. This show is sponsored by Tomahawk Live Trap. Check them out, livetrap.com. Well, it's the two of us again, the other Ashley. If we only had one Ashley Bishop and then Ashley Bishop didn't show up, then we would have no Ashley Bishops. But we have two Ashley Bishops, so we always have one Ashley Bishop. But the other Ashley Bishop is currently working in a shoe shining department. She's specifically shining boots, making sure that people look well dressed for work today. So
I was going to say NATO chaser, but
oh, they did just have a tornado up there in Wisconsin. That's crazy.
It is crazy. What's happening?
Have you ever been in a tornado? I feel like you have.
No, more hurricanes than anything.
Okay.
I've been through a Cat 3 hurricane. God, what hurricane was it? I can't remember, but I had just left the ER and then the hurricane hit.
You're like, what?
Yeah. But no NATOs down where I'm from. Up here there is actually a lot. I didn't go. I guess they hit and I was in the area. I was actually, random story. I was pet sitting for my boss at the time, and these tornadoes hit kind of close by, and I was very new to the area. I was probably here like maybe 1 or 2 years already, and I could not find a way to get to her house. Everything was flooded. There, like, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. So I guess technically I've been through a tornado, but not really. I mean, they hit the area, but it was awful.
It sounds awful. I lived in Ohio once. I know who lives in Ohio.
Of course you did.
Right. And I feel like we had tornadoes. I was pretty young, so I don't really remember them. But thankfully, yeah, I've never had to deal with that. So who knows what that's like. But Ashley up there in Wisconsin, it's tornadoes. It's
12 inches of snow.
It's unreal.
How are you?
Good. If you're watching on YouTube, I did have to shave my face.
I was just gonna say, you beat me to it.
Yeah, we did respirator fit training. If I could just go into hoarding houses every single day, nonstop, 5 days a week, I would do it. It's literally my favorite. I know your face right now is like, what? I don't know why it's my favorite thing. I've always been attracted to craziness.
We know that.
And so my dog agrees if you can hear him over the microphone.
Mooney, hi Mooney.
But yeah, things are good. Getting ready to actually get on an airplane to, I've been teaching at Fort Leonard Wood at the military police school since 2019. And I have this uneasy feeling like this is the last one due to some government financial restrictions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't have confirmation of that, so maybe I'm wrong, but the limbic brain usually doesn't lie. I don't know if you're familiar with the limbic part of your brain. It's pretty cool. It's the instincts, if you will. So it's usually right. So I'm treating it as it's the last time, like in a long time, that I'll be in St. Louis. I have to fly into St. Louis and then drive out to Leonard Wood, and it's going to be raining the whole time. So it's kind of like that sad, like, that somber, like, but and good news, Tomahawk Live Trap, they're celebrating their 100th year of business in this 2025. They're a family-owned and operated business who work with humane professionals around the world. They produce the most safe and effective animal handling equipment available. You can save 10% on their products by using discount code Keep It Humane. That's right, Keep It Humane in all caps. You can visit them online at livetrap.com or call 800-272-8727. And also, if you're listening, if this is your first time, please like, share, rate, follow, do all that stuff with the podcast, because then more people see the podcast. The more people see the podcast, the more we can spread awesome messages like the one we're about to do today. And I'm really excited to introduce our guest from I was going to say all the way from across the pond, but he's in the new London. I don't even know what you would call that, because New York is new. I don't know. He's in New York now, but I think he's in somewhere in England, maybe he'll let us know. Tom Norman, who is the co-founder of Farmkind. So Farmkind.Giving. You can check it out if you go online, Farmkind.Giving. Tom, welcome to Keep It Humane, the podcast.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Are you from England originally?
I am from England originally. Yeah, I normally live in London, but I am just over here in New York for a few days.
Where in like are you London? Or are you like Chester? Are you Luton? Like where?
No, I'm in London. Yeah, I live
Okay.
in like northwest London, just like about 30 minutes out from the center in a really nice little, very nice leafy part of London. It's very nice.
So if you've never like for our listeners, and I've had the experiences to I've lived in right outside of Manhattan. I've visited London, and to me, London is like the original New York City. But what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I used to first time I came to New York, I just felt it was like a kind of dirtier version of London.
I
I
didn't want to
wasn't a big
say
fan.
that.
It's grown on me actually. I think there are some really beautiful parts of New York as well. And there's some when you realize like the different what's different about it, obviously the height is really different and you
Mhm.
have some amazing old buildings, so old red stone buildings and stuff in New York. I think it is really beautiful. But yeah, I think London's a hard city to beat. It's an amazing place to live for sure. Expensive, but amazing.
So, what's your background? How did you get into this world of animal welfare? If you go to the website and kind of look at your About Us, it looks like you've had some like attorney background, but what drove you to get into this world?
Yeah, sure. So I was before starting Farmkind, I worked as a lawyer. I worked for the UK government, mainly on nuclear energy policy, but I did a little bit of animal law as well while I was there. Um, but I guess my journey to doing what I do now is long kind of it took a long time of like first thinking and um learning about animals and how they're treated in the world and in particularly sort of farm animals and how they're treated by society and then thinking about what to do about that. So I think like if I was to like kind of get like a real turning point moment for me, um, it would be I was actually at a law conference, and I was coming back and I was talking to my partner, and she read this book called "The Life You Can Save" while I was there, and basically it's a very easy to read philosophy book, but the core of the idea of this book is this sort of thought experiment where you imagine that you're walking along and there's a lake sort of there and there's a child in the lake and they're in trouble and you can't see anyone else around and like all of us like we would not hesitate to jump into that lake and pull that child out, right? Like no one would be like, oh well, my shoes will get ruined.
Wait, that
Like,
you're coming from a better perspective than America, because most people in this country, they're going to pull out their cell phones and just record from a distance.
Correct.
well, but maybe
Put it on
before TikTok,
TikTok.
we would have all jumped in. Now we're like, oh, but this is content. So let's assume that you're the kind of person who would jump in.
That's better. Thank you, Tom, for clarifying.
You, I like those people who would jump in, they would feel pretty good about themselves, right? You've saved a life, you've saved someone's life. This is a good day. This is probably one of the days you will remember for the rest of your life. And the point that Peter Singer, the writer of this thought experiment, makes is actually it turns out that we can kind of do this in our lives. So if all it costs us is really quite surprisingly small amounts of money, we can help save people's lives by things like giving them malaria bed nets, but also we can save the lives of animals. And it costs like in terms of distributing bed nets and things, it costs like about £5,000 to save, or $5,000 to save a human life. You can make a massive difference in the lives of animals for a dollar. So it costs about a dollar to ensure that a hen lives cage free, for example. And this, as people who love animals, who care about animals, I think this is really exciting because if we look at the way that animals are treated in the world, it can often feel really overwhelming, right? There's so many things, so many ways that animals suffer, unfortunately, whether it's because of what we as humans do or in nature. And it can feel really like disempowering and hard to think about this. But I think there's the exciting news is that actually all of us, you don't have to be, especially, smart or super rich or anything. You can actually, all of us normal people can actually make a difference in the lives of animals really simply through things like, for example, finding charities that are doing really good work and donating to those organizations. And so that realization for me, I found that really empowering, really exciting. And that's that kind of what led to Farmkind, where we find charities, we work with experts to find charities working on specifically factory farming. And then we recommend them to the public, and we say, look, if you want to help animals, if you want to know that your money is going to be spent really wisely to help some of the animals that are suffering most in our society right now, then this is a way that you can make a massive difference in the lives of animals, like chickens, for example, with this cage-free thing. Pigs, fish, all the animals that are factory farmed. So that's kind of that's how I ended up starting Farmkind.
That's really cool. And our listeners, just to kind of preface, like we, this is one of the reasons, Bishop, why we changed the name from the Animal Control Report to Keep It Humane is because we found that we wanted to expand on the animal welfare aspect of all of it. And a lot of our officer listeners have dealt with many, if not all, of the type of animals that we're talking about today in a different setting. Like somebody wants to have a pig, and then they find out that's, oh, I can't take care of this pig. We get involved. And so it's a really cool, I think, connection that we
Mhm.
have from the domestic side where, and I know in your bio it talks about your cats, Tom, from, cats sleeping on our beds to having a potbelly pig as a pet, right? So I think there's that aspect. And then there is a disconnect currently, especially I would say in this country, from food producing animals and animals or pets. And
Agreed.
yeah, yeah.
Agreed. And I was gonna ask, Tom, so I'm very naive when it comes to things across the pond. What is it like where you're from as far as animal welfare is concerned, when it comes to this and domesticated animals?
Yeah, so in general, Europe has for farmed animals has slightly higher protections than the US, North America. But really, across the board in Western Europe, things are not great. So in America, in the US, about 99% of the meat that people eat and the animal products comes from factory farmed animals. So what we mean by this is animals kept in the very largest facilities. They're kept indoors for their entire lives, usually crammed up against other animals. These can be very diseased conditions, very dirty conditions. We feed three-quarters of the antibiotics that are produced in the world to animals, most of them farmed animals, in order to tackle the fact that they're being kept in these really, really awful conditions, and things like cages for hens and things like this. Um, in the UK, it's very slightly less, so it's like about 80% of animals. So really, wherever you look in sort of in the West and increasingly, unfortunately, in places like South America and Asia, these practices are growing really, really fast. And actually, that's where these things are growing the fastest. But we're moving towards this kind of very industrialized, and we call it farming, but it's not really farming. It's more like the factory is the more appropriate part of that term, right? Because it's a very industrialized process. Sometimes you'll have literally three or four people looking after thousands of animals because they're using technology and things to avoid having to like hire a lot of people. And so farming communities are being really gutted and devastated by this because the sort of traditional farming jobs are typically disappearing now. Every year there are fewer and fewer farmers because we're instead of having the sort of traditional farming where people try and care for their animals, they try and understand how to look after them properly. We're moving to this just volume thing where you just pack as many animals in as you can, except that 10% of them are not going to make it, but that you can make it cheap enough that you to produce your products that you can that's you're still going to make your money as an organization, as a company. And and this is like wherever you look really in the world, this is the model that people are either moving towards or in the US and in Europe have already really moved towards.
Find it interesting. So in this country, and I'm not going to quiz you again, Bishop, but my idol in the animal welfare industry.
And we're bird.
Oh, look at that. She got called out for that one last week. So if you're listening, look, she got it right. When Henry Bergh started the ASPCA in the, I was going to say the Americas, like this is 1804. In the when Henry Bergh started the ASPCA, I mean, he built it after the RSPCA, which is the Royal Society of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. So it's interesting that like you're still the lead when it comes to, I think, animal welfare in the world, not just necessary. And we like to think we do it, and we do. I mean, we're getting there. We're getting there. But in America, I don't know. Is it safe
Are
to say?
we? Are
Well,
we?
I don't know. And I was going to ask this question kind of like, I'm not trying to be political when I ask this question, but like, is it fair to say that America is a capitalistic society?
So I think America, surprisingly, probably has in California specifically some of the most progressive, interesting animal welfare laws out there. So Proposition 12, which is sadly, I think, still under threat of being overturned at the federal level, but is a amazing set of laws which provided some of the strongest protections to animals that you'll see anywhere in the world, specifically pigs and chickens. And also, which is not something I think that's been done anywhere else, not only banned using practices like extreme confinement for these animals in the state, but also were required that any products being sold in the state, so raised in another state or in another country, also had to be to meet these standards. So overall in America, maybe things aren't so great, but there are some of these pockets. I mean, there are places like Berkeley. The city of Berkeley has banned factory farming altogether within the city limits. So there are some pockets of work. There's some great work going on in Denver as well on again on ballot initiatives. So there's some stuff going on in America that I think is really exciting and really actually world leading, as well as some other things that maybe are not so good. So there was a recent order from at the federal level to try and increase the speed of the slaughterhouses work, for example, which is already one of America's most dangerous jobs.
Mhm.
And speeding that up will only make that more so, right? So there's good things and there's bad things going on, I think, in the States.
What's the name of the documentary that it covers that slaughterhouse world out of Pueblo? I want to say it was from Pueblo, Colorado, and I'll Google it if you don't know off the top of your head. Um, it was about the fast food industry, and it was heartbreaking to see like probably like working for pennies on the dollar, like
Mhm.
people that were in the country illegally, like being just kind of slave workers, and then you get to see how the animals are treated through that. Um, and I recommend everybody watching it. So if that doesn't ring a bell, let me Google it while you guys talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because here locally there's a big poultry producer. So
Mm.
sometimes on my way to work, I get to see these beautiful 18 wheelers just carrying these stuffed chickens in these cages. And I've actually talked to some of the people, you know, some of the people that work.
Did we freeze? Wait, she froze. Are you still there? How did that happen? Lost the internet. Hello? Mhm.
Um,
Are
But
you
we'll
back?
continue.
You're
Oh,
back?
there, you're
there
back.
we go. We're all
So
back.
the internet just died on me and I apologize.
Uh,
So I am on
That's
my
okay.
hotspot.
But yeah, so the way that people talk that work there, it's quite interesting. In our industry where we use humane euthanasia, I don't want to say quite a bit, but it's kind of part of our language.
mm,
But recently in the last couple of months, talking to these people and kind of how they talk about their job and things like that, it's really eye-opening to say the least. And again, it's kind of heartbreaking, on my end. While I deal with a lot of domesticated animals, I see that almost every day going to work. I get to see these trucks just full of chickens
mm.
going to the factory to get processed.
You know, the sad thing about that too is there's trucks in Texas, like animal control trucks that look like mini versions of those poultry trucks where they're
Yes.
open cages and they like literally put our pets in there. Um, we I, they're so like this is such a sensitive topic in
Mm,
Hmm.
not even just like in the US, but even in our industry. And like one thing that most people, most of our listeners know, like I've been on a plant-based diet for a very long time, but I did recently incorporate fish into my diet,
mm.
which your calculator tells me I need to pay $35 a month to offset that balance, which is bizarre to me because it's more than if I ate like a regular carnivore diet. Anyway, we can get
Mm.
to that at some point. I mean, it's not like I eat fish every day, but um, like I even when like if someone would find out that I like in a setting, if I'm in a setting like whether I'm teaching a class or meeting somebody for the first time and they find out that primarily I'm a plant-based eater, it's usually like met with some sort of like ignorance, like, oh, like, well, I love meat, like if there's a threat, and I'm like, bro, you can eat whatever you want. Like, if you want to eat glizzies all day, eat glizzies all day. I don't care. Like, pause, but I don't care what you put in your mouth. Pause. To be honest, but that's you. Like, do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to judge you. Why are you judging me for that? Do you find like because you're supporting more of a plant I mean it seems like you're supporting more of a plant-based lifestyle that you are met with hate or you are met with resistance or you are met with um
Hostility.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I think a really good point to start on. So I think so. Part of what we kind of ethos at Farmkind and what the way we think about this problem is really to try to be an answer for some provide an option that isn't going plant-based and that's a different way for people to like to engage with this issue. Partly because of this. So I think the thing is almost all Americans are like care about animals actually. 74% of Americans say they don't want more factory farms. About 80% of Americans say that they're uncomfortable with the way that animals are treated in farming. But the thing is, like they most of these people, millions of people, are terribly served because on the one hand they have like the meat industry, which is telling them things like, beef is good for the environment actually, and like we put hens in cages for their own protection and these kinds of things. It's just not true. And on the other hand, you have a lot of animal organizations who are fighting for the better treatment of these animals who are saying, okay, if you care, what you need to do is go vegan. You need to stop eating animals altogether. And like, if you're not doing that, you don't care, right? And I just don't
Hmm.
think this is helpful at all. This is not a good conversation. It's not it what it does is it means that a lot of people who do care, who have some concerns about how animals are treated, there's no home for them in this conversation, and they can feel very
Mhm.
put off. And so that I think that's part of what leads to some of this aggression because people think you're going to try and take away their meat,
Mhm.
or you're going to try and guilt or shame them into like changing what they eat, and so they come at it with defensiveness and they come at with a bit of aggression because there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance for them maybe there because they do care about animals, but they also don't want you to pressure them or guilt them into making a lifestyle change that either they're not willing to do or maybe they can't. Like it's not easy actually if you've got if you've got several kids or whatever and you've got like hard job, like cooking like from scratch and all this sort of stuff that you often have to do to make a plant-based diet very affordable is not viable for everyone, right? And so this is part of what we try and do, which is to say, look, actually, there are other options. Like changing your diet is not in your lifestyle is not the only thing you can do to make a really big difference for animals. In fact, it probably isn't the most impactful thing you can do. Actually, some of these charities that we recommend, donating to those charities, I think can help. I'm pretty confident can help a lot more animals than simply changing your diet will. And we think that this is an option. It's not for everybody, but it's an option for other people who can therefore express their care for animals, can do something to help animals that's easy to do, fits in your with your lifestyle, doesn't really cost you very much money at all. Like as we maybe we'll talk about the calculator later, but it costs to like basically do as much good for animals as effectively going entirely vegan. For the average omnivore, it costs $23 a month in donations.
Yeah,
So
but if you eat fish like twice a week, it costs you like
yeah,
$75
if
a
you
month. What? All right,
if you fish, it's hard.
let's just jump into this compassion calculator. So
Sure, yeah.
I want people to be able to go check it out again. Farmkind.Giving. It's right up there on the menu bar. Compassion calculator. You can go in there and put in your kind of. It's cool too because it gives you
Hmm.
awareness of like what you're eating,
Hmm.
etc. So talk about like where did this algorithm come from? Like how did you put together the um, the analytics behind it?
Yeah. So for a bit of context, basically what this is it's like you can think of it like an offset calculator, but for your diet. So not a carbon offsetter, but a karma offsetter, right? It's about like helping helping animals just as much as if you were to effectively to cut animal products out of your diet. Um, and how this works is so, as I said, the charities that we recommend, we have come to recommend them through a really deep dive process, working with experts to really understand how these charities work and what they're doing, so that if you donate to them, your money is used wisely. And so, what we've been able to do is say, okay, for this number of dollars put in to this organization, this is how much what they'll do for animals. Like this is the benefit that they will do. So, in the case of, for example, the Humane League, how much money does it cost through their programs to get a hen out of a cage, out of a battery cage? And once you've got that information, you know exactly how much it costs to help animals a certain amount, and that really then leads you very easily to say, okay, if you know how much you eat, so you're like, okay, on an average week, I eat maybe like, I don't know, bacon twice a week, and I have a hamburger and milk every day for breakfast, and or whatever. We know how many animals that impacts, and we can then work out on the other side how much you need to donate to help animals just as much as that impact is. And so that's how we come up to it. And you can on our website see the spreadsheets that underlie this, exactly where we've got all these numbers from, how much, what all the different costs are, and things like that. But then we package it in this nice little calculator with some sliders, so you can easily navigate it and just see the numbers as well.
It's so cool, guys. Please, please visit it. I think it's very interesting to kind of put it in this perspective. And one thing I will say, Tom, as I'm sure you know, people in animal welfare are very passionate. And I do quite appreciate the layout and the message that your website gives and what your organization is trying to do, because I feel like you mentioned earlier, I feel like a lot of people, whether it's dealing with farm animals or dealing with the no-kill movement on our end of domesticated animals, it's all or nothing.
Mm.
And I appreciate organizations that are willing to have a conversation and saying that it's not all or nothing. So kudos to you guys.
And
Thank
wouldn't it
you.
be something if we had this for the animal shelter world instead of this arbitrary goal of, well, you have to save them all and 90% is the goal. You have to reach that, or you're going to have crazy advocates coming to your shelter telling you that you're killers. But what if we had a fund where it went into an access to care portal and people could apply to um, grants or donations for spay and neuter services or true medical needs. Like that's the tie-in that we need in our industry, in my opinion.
Agreed. And Tom, I don't know if you'd like to go into this or not, but do you see some of this no-kill movement on our end as far as domesticated animals, dogs, cats, companion animals? Has that kind of flooded into y'all's goals and what you're trying to do on your end?
Um, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but I guess we currently we focus on farmed animals, mainly because so part of the reason that we focus on farmed animals right now is because as I'm sure you know, there is any whatever part of the animal movement you look at, like there is not enough money, right? Part of the reason why unfortunately animals have to be euthanized is of course because there just isn't the space to keep them all, right? And um but 97% of the donations, 95% of the donations that go towards animals go to companion animals currently. And so, in as much as the shelter movement is massively under financial pressure and really struggling, farmed animals receive about 3% of donations to animals, right? So this is about $290 million a year globally, which is less than McDonald's makes in profits in 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the entire world of about 80 billion animals that we're trying to help with $290 million a year. Um, and so that's basically why we've started here, because this is like the really acute problem from a funding point of view. Like there are amazing things going on to help animals, but there simply just isn't enough money to help even close to all the animals that need help in this space.
And
But
to give some backstory on where Bishop was going with that question is in in our world, so in the animal shelter world in the United States specifically, and I'm actually curious. I've never really done research on if the UK does anything similar, but there's a large group, a nonprofit that um, is the leader, the catalyst in creating this idea of we have to save every animal that walks into the animal shelter. And in theory, it's a good concept, and I'm not against saving animals. Like that's clearly an important thing, but it sets a standard that is unobtainable due to many factors, whether it's funding, whether it's public safety, public health, and so it makes this confusing dichotomy in our world that if you euthanize more than 10%, you're a bad animal shelter, or you have bad morals, or you have bad policies, or you're not doing things right. And so it definitely sets us up for failure. And uh, I just want to see a world where we can all coexist in the aspects of like, we're just trying to help people help animals. And so that's kind of like the background of it. Not every single animal shelter in the United States is on board with that. And I would say if you were to give truth serum in our industry, I would think it would maybe be 50-50, or maybe even more against than for. But the problem is the large nonprofit can help financially. I know many people that said, yeah, I'll take money for them for free, but I'm not going to like totally get on board with all their policies. And so it's an unfortunate place that we're in because in my opinion, it doesn't help us help animals. It creates this
mm,
problem that, um, like a problem amongst um, like-minded people that we don't need. We shouldn't have that problem.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I guess Tom, to clear up my question, like, is the no-kill movement kind of spilling over into y'all's industry, in a sense where they're like, no, we just need to stop everything. All the animals need to live free. Nobody needs to eat anything. I guess was kind of where I was going.
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is a in the kind of farm animal space. There's typically the way a lot of people talk about this is abolitionism versus like a sort of welfare approach. So abolitionism is like, and it's sort of what it sounds like it would be. The idea that what you should campaign for is simply the end of the mistreatment of animals, so end of factory farming and things like this. Whereas a welfare approach is more incremental, really. Like most people who work on welfare, the funny thing is they also want to see the end of factory farming, but it's just a question of like it's just a different thing about how you get there, and it's a more incremental approach rather than just saying this must end right now, but like and we reflect that in the charities that we recommend actually. So we recommend a lot of organizations that are helping animals right now. This sort of more welfare approach. For example, getting them out of cages, things like preventing pigs and baby animals from being having things like their teeth removed without anesthetic. These kinds of practices that go on very typically in
Hmm.
factory farms at the moment.
Hmm.
But then we also work with charities that are trying to work on evolving the food system past factory farming to something different. So charities working on, for example, cultivated meat, which is like where you can produce what is biologically identical meat, but without actually raising animals. So it's produced like through a sort of laboratory process, as it were, and in kind of making this more of a mainstream thing, so that potentially we can all eat for like a massively, not only without the need to raise and kill animals, but also a fraction of the environmental cost that industrial agriculture has, and with none of the kind of public health risks that come along with that as well. And then we also have charities who work on things like helping farmers to transition to plant-based agriculture and finding other ways to to run their businesses that are less environmentally damaging, that are more potentially more sustainable for us as the future, as we, as a world try and grapple with not only the way we treat animals, but also climate change and things like the pandemic risks that come along with this kind of industrial agriculture model that we have.
Yeah, the epidemiology, and it's something you don't think about every day, but the epidemiology of, what we're putting in our mouths and how that
Mhm.
kind of affects everything that goes around. And
Mm.
yeah, if you really think about it, it can get a little scary.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, like I think three-quarters of the pandemics that over the last sort of 100 years or so have been started in in animals. It's a massive because I guess like it's not surprising if you cram a lot of we all know from COVID, right? If you cram a lot of people together in a tube train or something, then you could spread the disease really easily. And like a factory farm is kind of like that, where you're just cramming a lot
Hmm.
of beings together in a stressful environment. So their immune systems are a little bit depleted as well, and if a disease gets in there, it can absolutely just rip through this place, and obviously that creates more opportunity um, for viruses to mutate and all these kinds of things. So it's a from an epidemiological point of view, from a disease risk point of view, it's a massive, massive problem. And this is why we see things like bird flu being such a problem, partly. Um,
I agree. It's just, yeah, flu in itself is a scary virus.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So where do y'all see yourselves in about 10 years, Tom? Like what do you see your organization and your organizations that you work with, what do you see for y'all's future?
Yeah, so I think the future is pretty exciting actually. So um we exist to find great organizations. We're really here as as cheerleader for other organizations, right? Our job is to find great organizations and be like, these are great people to donate to. We have this compassion calculator, which is a great way to do that. But our job is really to champion the other people who are doing amazing work in the space. And there has been some amazing work. So over the last 10 years, for example, or the last 15 years, I've gone from in the US 4% of hens living cage free to now about 40% of hens are cage free in the US, which is a massive, massive change.
Impressive.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge
But
change.
not to rain on parades. Just because it says
Yeah.
it's cage free doesn't mean it's humane.
Yes, yes, this is true. It's not the it's that it doesn't mean they're all living like outdoors, like idyllic lifestyles. What it means is many of these animals are living in sheds. But estimate there some sort of academic work that's been done on this estimates that about a third of the total suffering that a hen has in its life comes from living in a cage. So although it's not they're not living the best life, they are living a much much better life than they would have been were they not in the case. But you're absolutely right. It's not the whole problem. But this is a massive improvement. Um, and we're seeing cultivated meat becoming this thing that we're seeing massive investment by governments into helping to transition the food system into a sort of cleaner, environmentally more clean and lower animal system. So there's some really exciting stuff going on, some really exciting wins going on in the space. I think because as we grapple with things like climate change, as we now hopefully take pandemic risks more seriously, having gone through a major pandemic over the last 5 years ago, I think that the impetus for faster change in the space and really evolving the food system past factory farming, which is just not a viable system for feeding the world that we have today. I think that this is growing, and the charities that we support are really at the forefront of doing that. So over the next 10 years, what we want to see is that increasing to grow. We want to be a part of growing the funding for that space and really giving the sort of rocket fuel that allows that change to accelerate, so that we see more animals living better lives, living less, and ultimately fewer animals being factory farmed, because we develop these new ways to feed ourselves with healthy, clean, great food that people want to eat as well.
We all need food. There,
We
there is
do
a
all need
thing out
food.
there, if you want to research it, not you necessarily, but you as our listeners. They're called breatharians. If you've never heard, you've heard. They just stare at the sun and drink water. The sun gives them all the nutrients they need. They look like a toothpick. Anyway, they do exist in the world, and successfully. So, do you know any breatharians, Tom?
I don't. I read it. There's a book, a really, really good book called The Vegetarian by Han Kang. It's a little novel, but this is about a lady who essentially becomes a breatharian. She decides that she's going to essentially photosynthesize to keep herself alive.
Mhm, mhm.
It's a very good, interesting psychological novel. But I've never actually met a breatharian.
Very, very cool. Bishop, you're just like, oh, well, just don't want to know.
Nothing surprises me these days, Dan. I mean, I've been in it 16 years and, just I feel like our world is getting more towards the all or nothing, and it can get a little scary when it comes to stuff like this or companion animals or public health. I just it's a conversation that needs to continue with both sides. There's
Mm.
no reason for it to be all or nothing.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. Like so often, right, the actual solutions exist somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and so as I think you're right, like so many things in our world have becoming more and more polarized, and it just
Hmm.
is so unhelpful because yeah, real solutions in the world are messy and complicated and do require compromising between different groups and the things that they want. And so actually the solutions that work are often like they don't look, no one in in the perfect world would want this, but we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a really complicated, difficult world, and so you end up with these solutions that work if you're prepared to kind of work together and compromise and find these middle ground positions.
Agreed. We live in that gray area.
Yeah.
100%. Well, this has been pretty fascinating, man. I um, didn't know what to expect, to be honest, and I think that's kind of the cool part about the podcast is we get to really
Hmm.
network and meet people doing some great work around the world. We've had a lot of different guests come on, and we've talked. We've had some different types of animal welfare things throughout the years, but this is different from the aspects of how do we give back to ensure that there's humane treatment of animals throughout the world? And that's what's really cool. It's not saying put your hamburger down, or if you're riding around right now eating your steak burrito from Chipotle, that's okay, right? And it's clearly better than my one fish serving a week. That's $11 donation. You could have one hamburger, and that's a $1 donation. So I might have
Sustainability.
to.
Which is great. Again, Tom, I really kudos to you guys and how you market. And again, it's not an all or nothing, it's how we can fix it.
Yeah.
I just honestly, it's just a breath of fresh air, really, in animal welfare in general, because sometimes people are just trying to beat things down your throat and the message gets lost.
Can you talk really quick about you right before we started recording? I can use words today.
Hmm.
You're in Manhattan, or you're in the Bronx. You said the Bronx, right? Or Harlem?
Harlem, yeah,
Harlem. Do you know any hip hop groups from Harlem? I'm going to quiz you right now.
yeah. No, I don't. I don't know if you can tell from my accent, but I'm not like very
Well,
hip hop.
I want you do you have Spotify or Apple Music?
I do have Spotify, yeah.
Okay, please, for just while you're in Harlem, I'm going to ask you to play. His name is Cameron.
Cameron.
Cameron, just play a little bit of Cameron
Okay, I will do
before
that
you
for
leave
you.
Harlem. All right,
Sure.
do it for you, just under my recommendation.
Okay.
Uh, or you could just put in Dipset if you want. DIP set. That's a Harlem-based rap group. Anyway, I digress. What was I trying to say? You were at a cool event, and I would love for our listeners to hear a little bit about that if you have time.
Yeah, sure. So, we, as part of this kind of like the work that we do, we hosted an event over the weekend in Queens where we were basically bringing together people, dog owners from across the city to essentially say like take that compassion and that love that we have for our pets and the companion animals that we live with and extend that to all animals. So we had a parade where these dogs and their owners kind of did like a little sort of mini protest march, and we to launch a pledge that we've developed. This is you can find it at pledgekindness.com, and basically it's asking people to take four really simple actions that almost anyone can do that massively help all animals. So it is to adopt instead of buying your pets.
Definitely.
Um, it is, yeah, absolutely. It is to buy cruelty-free beauty products, which is very easy to find these days. Or anything you need to buy, you can find one that's not been tested on lab animals. It is to use humane pesticide methods and things in your house to protect the wild animals that sometimes unfortunately get into our houses. And finally, to donate to charities that are working to help factory farm animals. And by taking these four simple actions, which people can pledge to do at pledgekindness.com, they can make a absolutely huge difference to all the animals that we as humans interact with. And so we had a lot of very cute dogs, very excited dogs, kind of marching around the park. It was absolute chaos. A car literally drove down the road and its wheel came off
Oh no.
as we were there. Yeah,
Sounds like
I've never,
Harlem. That sounds right. Yeah.
yeah, I've never seen that. Thankfully, that wasn't a metaphor for the day. It was like, the wheels did not come off, and we had a great time. But yeah, it was great fun. I think people had a great time, and it was yeah, it was just a lovely way to launch this kind of new initiative that we have.
Well, Tom, you're always welcome back on the program. We like to extend the offer. If you ever have things that you want to promote, please send it our way. We're happy to get it, to our listeners and make sure people know the good work that you're out there doing.
Thank you.
Bishop, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
No, it's like, again, too, sometimes we get stuck in our box of animal welfare when it comes to companion animals. And to be honest, I'll be the first one to tell you, you forget a lot about everything outside of that. Sometimes, I don't come across a lot of livestock for,
Mm.
my daily job, or even when it comes to like livestock and they're farming for that particular purpose. So, it's always great to have people who, are familiar with that industry and kind of what's going on, and to kind of put the word out there, I mean, we all know there's other stuff outside of our industry, but just to get educated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for
Thanks.
coming
It's
on.
been really fun. I've had a great conversation. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And please check out again their website, which is farmkind.giving. Again, farmkind.giving. Do the compassion calculator. That's fun. I
It
messed
is
around
fun.
with it. I'm not going to eat fish forever, so I'll be back on that $0 a month here in a little bit. I promise. Just trying to get this fracture fixed. Um, check us out. I guess our website is important too. Keep it humane.
Mhm.
Keepithumane.com. Check that out. Check out all the socials. Like, share, rate the podcast. And please remember to help people
Help animals.
keep it
Keep
humane.
it in mind.